Yeah, I mean, today we have basically a sort of specific topic to talk about because both me and you, me first, and then you, we read or played, whatever you want to call it, the house in Fata Morgana, and I was completely blown away. You're going to tell me about your own experience, but I mean, just to begin with, what are your first thoughts on it?
My first thoughts are I'm so happy that something like this exists and that it reached a wide audience because, you know, current day conventional wisdom tells us that everyone is interested in everything that's short. We have short, young people have short attention spans, men don't like to read, all of these sort of um, modern day tropes, for lack of a better word,
Yeah.
that we hear all the time now that we're in the age of social media. And I can't say that I've completely bought into them because I think long form podcasts and shows like this demonstrate that there are actually lots of people who want to hear this kind of stuff and who want to have these deeper conversations, these longer searching conversations, the kind that we have when we're 19 and we're sitting in our apartments and talking to friends and trying to make sense of the world and our place in it, and we that's a thrilling thing to continue to do throughout life, and I was, first of all, I was blown away by the story. I absolutely loved it. It's so up my alley. It's kind of, in some ways, it's very similar to the kinds of things I like to write and
Yeah.
the kinds of things that inhabit my own sort of fantasies anyway. So I was definitely predisposed to like it. But I loved how complex it was. I mean, it was hard to follow, and yet it was so engaging, and it never made me want to give up and let go. And I was also just amazed looking through because I watched it through I don't have a gaming computer. I don't have any of that stuff. I'm very old school, so I watched it through YouTube,
Yeah.
the way you recommended, and it was a little difficult for me at first because the whole YouTube style is that
Yeah.
whoever's channel it is talking
Yeah.
while they're taking you through the house of Fata Morgana. And at first I thought, oh my God, I don't think I'm going to be able to stand this. I can't, this guy will not shut up. I understand why he does it this way. I understand that this is the way it's supposed to be. But the story was so good that I, after a while, I just tuned that out. You know what I mean? And I don't even know if I was tuning it out as much as maybe it just sort of all came together. And I was drawn into the actual story, and that in and of itself, given the format and my
Yeah.
like hostility to that format, is saying a lot about the story. And and
Yeah.
then I started other YouTube channels that were focused on House of Fata Morgana, and consistently it was like the greatest story ever told. Oh my God, I can't believe how much I love this. And I was also heartened that most of these channels were men
Yeah.
who I've been told don't care about stories, which I've never believed. I've never believed. That's not been my experience, but that's, the conventional wisdom, which I don't think is wise. And, it's
Yeah.
just conventional, right? And so I was just blown away by it. It, it it never served me what I expected, and yet at the end, it gave me everything I wanted.
Yeah, and we certainly have to talk about that last scene because it's just
Oh my
the
God!
best thing ever. Right?
Oh
But
my
but
God!
but yeah, before we get into that, was something that I really really loved about that story was that it starts one way and you really don't know where you are. You have no idea
No.
at all where it's going, but then as you progress, what comes later makes what comes before even better, right? Did you also have that feeling?
Absolutely, and it puts it all into perspective. And even when I mean, I don't think that I was going to say when your attention starts to lag, but mine really didn't. It's just that when you're maybe not sure where this is headed, let's put it that way, and and when I was confused and I thought, well, wait a minute, I'm not understanding what's happening here. Um, Eventually, everything will be illuminated, and it starts to make sense. And on top of that, when it does start to make sense, it makes beautiful sense,
Oh yeah.
and you feel simultaneously so impressed by the storyteller and so clever yourself for having, you know, stuck with
Yeah.
it and got into it. And I think that that is a really great relationship between a story and a and a reader, a storyteller and a story absorber, I guess, Um,
Yeah.
and few
But I
stories
have.
can pull that off. You know what I mean? Few stories can make you feel that way. That is a huge magic trick.
Yeah, no, because there are great stories that are like you start the story and you go through it and it's all great from beginning to end. But this one, it's like everything is great, but as you progress, what came before gets even greater. So,
Yeah, I know.
and that's
It's
really hard to pull off. Really,
that's
really hard.
That's very, very hard to pull off. And you can see it in so many series that you might read or trilogies where they start out so strong, and you can't wait to see how the author is going to end it, and then the author ends it, and you think, really, that's what I've been waiting for. And you almost kind of want to rewrite your own ending, or you just want to go back and enjoy the first installments or whatever it is, the first couple of books, and pretend like the last book didn't happen. You know what I mean? I mean, we've talked about how Game of Thrones disappointed us probably 2 or 3 times now on these podcasts, but that was,
Yeah.
that's such a great example of a story that's so great,
Oh yeah.
that just, at least the television version, obviously, but the television version became such a disappointment. It felt like a bait and switch. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That they served us one thing, and then it started off with lobster thermidor or whatever, and then they switched it to, boxed mac and cheese or something.
Yeah, no, I mean, of the House of Fata Morgana, I have just two small criticisms. I mean, I still give it a 10 out of 10, of course, but
Yeah.
anyway, the two small criticisms. The first one, I mean, the beginning of it, the first door before the first big twist, it seems a bit misleading. It seems one kind of story that you're going to
It's
experience there, and then it
Yeah.
completely shifts, and it can be a little bit at the beginning you're seeing the story between Mel and Ellie and the white-haired girl,
Mhm.
and it seems even a little bit childish, and you're like, what the heck is this? What the story is going to be like? I mean, is this a story for children, or and then it shifts completely, but up till that point it's misleading. So
It is misleading, and what I think was in the author's head, and obviously this is just speculation, right? But I think what the author was trying to do was establish with the audience or the reader, however one is is taking in the story, was establish a baseline naivete, childlike naivete, and
yeah.
then take them through that loss of innocence.
Mm,
So I suspect, at least, that was very much on purpose.
yeah.
But at the same time, I felt the same way you did. I felt like it was a complete bait and switch.
Yeah.
That I was, and I was enjoying the story that was being laid out. I was there. It was a little, like you said, it seemed a little childish, but that's okay, because I think that I think that, like, I love The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, you know what I mean? And that some sort of childish, cartoony sort of things can be really wonderful. So I was absolutely open to it, but then it took me in a completely different direction.
Yeah. Yeah, and
Um,
then the other criticism is door number two. I mean, the story of the Bestia, Yukimasa, and
yeah,
Pauline, and those people. I think it dragged on a little bit too long. Not extremely long, but a little bit too long. At a certain point, I was already like, oh, come on, this is already a bit too much. And that's actually a common criticism that some people have, because from door number 3, or at least door number 4 onward, most people say, oh no, this is definitely a 10 out of 10, an 11 out of 10, whatever. But that door, I mean, particularly when the white-haired girl arrives at the mansion and their story, I mean, perhaps it dragged a little bit too long there. I don't know. Yeah,
I think you're right. And it was funny because when that door, opened, for lack of a better word, right? I thought, oh, I see where this is going. They're now going for a Beauty and the Beast sort of story, and perhaps each door is going to take on a new mythology that is kind of in our consciousness. But again, that's not really what they did. I mean, yes, of course, there was no entirely new ground that was broken, right? It's such a mythological story, and these stories have been, told for millennia, but it was not that way. Only door number 2 kind of had that going on, and then it again took a completely different direction, but without kind of destroying your emotional connection to the characters in the world. And that's another really incredible magic trick to pull off as a storyteller, and that I was so impressed with and want to learn from, because that's you hope to inspire the kind of emotions that House of Fata Morgana inspires in in the people who read your stories or watch your stories, depending on what they're.
But by the way, when it comes to the twists that we get across the different doors, was there any one of them that you sort of saw coming, or? Because there was one that I saw coming. I got it right, but it was just the one.
I'm trying to remember, because I watched it actually, when you and I talked about it first, and then I refreshed myself because I wanted to remember. Because I couldn't remember it. I'm looking over my notes from ages ago.
I mean, door number 1 was the twist. Door number 1 was the twist with the siblings. Door number 2 was the twist that Yukimasa basically killed Pauline, which appeared as another bestia. And that the bestia was Yukimasa, of course. Door number 3 was basically the twist that Maria was plotting against the white-haired girl and Jacopo.
Right, yeah. That I guess that didn't surprise me particularly. I was sort of expecting
door number 3.
Yeah, that
it was the same
me.
for me.
I expected that. I thought that was a common trope. What I didn't expect was that Michelle or Michal, I don't know how.
It's Michelle because it's a French name. So
right, that's kind of what I thought, but I always pronounce it the way a Czech would, which is Michal, which I was wrong. But I did not expect him to not have a penis. That's for sure. That was a wild twist for me, that they would come up with that, as a romantic twist and actually make it work, because usually that's such a weirdly embarrassing, obviously desexualizing, I mean, literally, but yet they still made the romance work despite that. I thought was pretty incredible.
Yeah, by the way, did you know that the story, I mean, the author Keika Hanada started writing that story in 2009, and so he inserted that bit, I mean, with an intersex person in the story and made it really meaningful. I mean, what do you think about that? Because he basically was using something that in the current political and cultural environment would be very controversial, and he basically, I don't know, was 15 years ahead of his time or whatever.
I took it, usually I feel like that's something like that is inserted inorganically and for political reasons, and you can feel that. And I don't like to feel that. Like I will take anything in a story,
Yeah.
whatever slant it has, as long as it feels organic to the story. And I've, first, this was such a symbolic story
Yeah.
in every way. So when in using that didn't bother me at all. I thought it was really interesting, and I thought he actually did a very good job at making it a believable part of the story, and making the character extremely empathetic. And
And I guess,
dealing with
and I,
very real pain and emotions that would come with something like that, with that kind of condition too, instead of making it just a political trope that is about 1 inch deep rather than the mile deep that it needs to be. Does that make
yeah,
sense? Yeah.
yeah. Sure, sure.
Yeah, I know. And I thought in his use of it, I thought it was a really, really interesting device
Yeah.
instead of an insertion. Do you know what I mean? That
Yeah.
feels conscious, like, oh, here we have a non-binary character, which there's nothing wrong with having a non-binary character. It's like, but please don't make it feel like you're trying to have a non-binary character. Make it happen. Give us real emotions and real relationships and real struggles and real triumphs with this character, and not just
Yeah, and it's not political at all, or at least it doesn't feel
doesn't
political at
feel
all.
that way.
I mean, there's just that small thing, which for the purposes of the story, it's also great. Where since he's placing like an intersex character in the Middle
Mhm.
Ages, there's lots of social persecution, and in the end, he ends up murdered, executed because of that, and is treated like a demon's child, a witch, something like
Yeah,
that. So
yeah.
if there's anything that is slightly political about it, it would be that, but it makes perfect sense in the context of the story. So
That's exactly what I thought. I thought that it was brilliant. I thought it was really, really well done.
oh my god, but something that when you went through the story of the maid, and basically Giselle going through those hundreds of years, those centuries, waiting for Michelle to come back. I mean, didn't you feel, or sort of feel, the same pain that she felt,
Yeah.
and the boredom and all of that? I think that bit was really well made, because of course you're not the character, it's herself. You're not yourself going through hundreds of years waiting for your loved one to appear again, to get reconstructed or whatever, but you feel a little bit the torment, right?
Absolutely. And that was so, I mean, that was just so beautifully done. And I don't know, the prose is actually very simple in this, and that's what's so incredible about it. It's not overly written. It's not feeling floral, the way sometimes stories like this, these sort of epic stories, can be either overwritten the way, with just too much detail. For
Yeah.
instance, that you can get that in epic fantasy where it's just, drawn too heavily. It's every little detail is filled in, which can be really off-putting because it doesn't allow you to sort of bring your own imagination into it. Or it can just be too floral, and that can be off-putting because you can almost like smell the perfume coming off the words. But the author was really able to strike that balance of just being really descriptive in his language,
Yeah.
but simple enough that you feel so drawn in. And you're so right. All those years of waiting, you feel like you are waiting with the character, and you're in pain with the character, and you can actually feel feel it physically in your body hurting, you know, or you can feel that sense of longing that you feel yourself when you're going through something that is difficult and you're waiting, you know, you're in, you know, what Dr. Seuss calls the waiting place, right? And I thought it was incredible. And it, you know, I don't want to jump to the end, but it's all of that waiting that that he was able to take you through. And also, I mean, I thought he took you through pain in a very, you know, obviously in a very graphic way, but also in a very real way. And you found yourself as a reader, for lack of a better word, you found yourself as a reader experiencing the unimaginable and yet somehow able to shoulder it.
Yeah.
And that's what I thought was so incredible. And I think that that's really what resonates, I suspect what resonates with so many people in watching this, and what resonates with male readers, you know, because that there was a kind of an equal amount of pain and strife with the male and the female characters. It wasn't just like one woman pining for something, but you don't really know what the guy is feeling, you know, because there's so much now written from, even if the main character is a guy, it's written for women because 80% of the readers are women, so it's very much from a woman's point of view. And yet I felt like this really brought everybody in and showed that sort of the human pain that we feel. And what I also loved about it was that even the antagonists and the characters who do really terrible things, they're not excused. And it's not even like, oh, but here's why they did those terrible things, so it's okay. But it's just, here's their story. Here's why they did those terrible things. You know, with so there was judgment for their actions, but not judgment for them as human beings and their experience, which again I thought was just brilliant, because it doesn't make them cartoon characters, for instance, because cartoon villains are boring as hell, and you don't just want to, you know, except maybe in a slasher movie or something, and like Halloween, you know, you don't just want this purely evil character that has nothing else going on, you know, other than, well, this is an evil character, you know. And I thought the author did just a brilliant job of showing us how we become villains.
Yeah, and when it comes to the antagonists, I guess that also toward the end, the final door, when Michelle sort of goes back in time to try to get their backstory and show it to Morgana for that,
and
for
save her.
yeah, and save. Yeah, when he did that, I mean, I guess that the message there, and even perhaps Yuki Masa is the most brutal of all of them, and Jacopo is also very vicious. But but I guess that the message there was that for all of them, even with all the bad things they did, they were never completely unredeemable, right?
No, and I think that a lot of modern stories have ignored the redemption arc of a character, because there has been, at least in the last, I don't know, maybe last couple of decades, I think that there has been just a lack of grace towards our villains, you know what I mean? But that I think has also, there's been a lack of grace in our culture, you know, with once social media became so big, and with people digging up, you know, what somebody said on social media 10 years ago, for heaven's sake, or when they were a kid and trying to use that to destroy their future, you know what I mean? There's been a real lack of grace, and it was so refreshing to get absorbed in a story that that was abundant with grace, and yet was also abundant with horror, you know, and with with tragedy and beauty and villainy, you know?
Yeah. And another thing, something that the story reminded me of was Dante's Divine Comedy, because there's the doors, and in each
Mhm.
door, if you look closely, you have one or several different kinds of sins, and
Yes.
then I guess that you can also interpret it as, if you look at the story of Michelle and Giselle particularly, it's like you start in hell, and then as Michelle walks up the stairs in the watchtower to learn the story of Morgana, it's sort of like purgatory. And then there's also the version of purgatory for Giselle, as she has to wait hundreds
Mhm.
of years for Michelle to come back. And then toward the end, it's like arriving in paradise or something like that. So and then
Yeah.
it's like door number one, at least this is the way I understood it. Door number one, it's the main sin there, I guess, is cowardice, and then door number two is wrath. Door number
Mhm.
three, it's like pride and greed.
Mhm.
And then of course it's not that door number 4, 5, 6, 7 as deals with another particular kind of sin specifically, but I guess that maybe Morgana also has her particular sin is, I'm not sure if there's a specific word for it, but it's basically the sin of not being able to forgive who wronged you, something like that. I'm not sure if there's a word for that.
Yeah, I feel like there is a word, and I can't think of the specific word too, because she was so wronged. It's not.
Yeah.
It was so unequivocal what happened to her,
Oh my
and
God, she
so
has the most brutal backstory. My
oh my
God.
oh my God, and and then she gets her arm chopped off on top of it and is chained, in a prison, and it's her story is so unbearably tragic,
Yeah.
that it's hard to imagine. It's actually a testament to the goodness of her soul that she split into two, that her personality split into two, and she became the white-haired girl, you know?
Yeah.
And that was, the embodiment of the goodness that was left in her. And then, the the witch, the Morgana character, was that, you know, incredibly hurt part of her who could not let go, and became a force of destruction instead of a force of grace and good, the way the white-haired girl, you know,
Yeah.
was that. And um oh God, that's just so incredible.
But oh my God, can you imagine someone in real life going through what Morgana went through? I mean, like
No,
be,
and and you keep thinking,
being
like, how.
born.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry.
I thought what Giselle went through was bad.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I thought, oh my God, I can't believe she survived that. And then what Michelle went through was so horrible
Yeah.
and cruel, uh, and then you get to the antagonist story,
Yeah.
and you're given this incredibly horrific, human, and strangely hopeful story for this person.
Yeah.
There was something so hopeful, again, with the redemption arc. I mean, one of the reasons why redemption arcs are so beautiful is because they're hopeful. And
Yeah.
we always want to believe that we can reach someone who seems that, after who has been consumed by their demons,
Yeah.
and that we
And
can somehow
also,
cast out those demons.
yeah, and also toward the end, when Morgana sort of frees Nell or Mel, sorry, Mel, Yukimasa, and Jacopo from the mansion, and she doesn't actually completely forgive them. It's a very realistic way of dealing with it, because I mean, of course, it would be ideal if she had just completely forgive them, but but it sounds more realistic that way. I mean, because she had been so hurt by them that I mean, she was already doing something good. She was basically again, not forgiving them, but sort of finally being able to move on beyond torturing them or torturing them forever, and taking delight in that. But it sounded, I don't know, it sounded very realistic to end things that way.
I totally agree. I felt like she got to a place where she could forgive but not forget. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Forgive. I mean, maybe forgive is even too strong, but where she was done punishing, like you said. She was done hating. She was letting go of that. She's letting go of them too, which I think if there had been more of a forgiveness narrative in the like the you know, the prodigal son kind of way, where you welcome this person back into your life and you kill the fatted calf. But that was not that story. And I'm glad it wasn't that story too. I think that it needed to be exactly what it was.
But you know, something that I think is one of the biggest themes across the entire story is the importance of honest communication. Because, I mean, if you look across the several different stories, and it's perhaps even more dramatic in the third door, I mean, the complete miscommunication or even lack of communication between the white-haired girl and Jacopo, and that's what ruins their relationship. It's not even Maria. Maria, it's just contributing a little bit to that. But and then to contrast that with when finally Giselle and Michelle reunite after that dramatic night where Michelle almost stabs her with a knife, and she runs away, and then she comes back, and they basically lay out everything about their lives, what happened to them. I mean, apart from the back, some of the story of Michel, which is saved for later, and the fact that he is intersex and stuff like that. But yeah, most of what's important they lay out, and then I mean, it works for them, but for the others it doesn't work, and it's because they are unable to honestly communicate to other people what they are, how they feel, and stuff like that. Right.
Yeah.
So for me, at least in part, this is basically a tragedy of miscommunication, or lack of communication, if you want to put it that way.
Yeah, I mean, what all the doors did, you know, the different doors, the different chapters. However, there was, I mean, I think you're right. I think that that's kind of the big takeaway in terms of like interpersonal relationships is communication. But I feel like in the best sort of style of an epic story of a mythology is that it took you through human foibles, and the best and the worst, and helped us kind of work through our own emotions and our own mistakes. In this highly dramatized form, right? Where the mistakes that these characters made had such dire consequences. You know, I mean, in our own lives, usually the mistakes we make, our consequences are not quite so dire. You know, they're less so, but they're definitely related to, or you know, reflected in this somehow, that they're smaller versions of that perhaps, but it kind of helps take you through that, and also helps you understand how a mistake, how lying to yourself and others, miscommunication, whether it's on purpose or on accident, what a force of destruction it is and how it can completely take you down.
Yeah. By the way, when it comes to the first three doors, and because there's that element there of to what extent the tragedy was brought up by Morgana, because they were drawn to the mansion and the mansion was under her control to completely ruin their stories, their stories in their new life, let's say. I mean, to what extent do you think that tragedy was caused by Morgana or caused by the behavior of the characters anyway, and it would have happened anyway? Because there's that lingering question, right? I mean, would it have happened the same way if Morgana didn't manipulate their story and what happened in the mansion? If she didn't do that, would it have happened?
Well,
and for me, it seems that it would. So,
what I thought was interesting about it, yeah, I mean, I think ultimately I agree with you, because would it have happened exactly the same way if Morgana hadn't been manipulating the situation? No, it wouldn't have happened exactly the same way. But the fact was that what she was, her manipulations, brought out what was already there in those characters.
Yeah.
And it might have been something else that came out, or even if it was, the same sort of instinct, the same sort of powerfully negative force that kind of came out to play, it might have changed the circumstances some, but I think they would have been no less tragic.
Yeah.
Because that was what had to be learned. That was the lesson that had to be learned.
Yeah.
And I one of the things that I'm going to mess up this quote. Okay, so I'm just understand that I'm paraphrasing pretty egregiously, but there's an author named John O'Donohue. I mean, he's no longer alive. He was an Irish priest, and he was just, I mean, my God, I mean, he's just a beautiful writer. And he wrote basically an entire book on beauty, on meditations on beauty. And one of his one of the things that he writes about is how he feels like there's a misunderstanding of beauty as being naive. And he really does not like naivete, that, oh, she's an innocent beauty. And he's like, innocent beauty is useless because this person has never been tested. Or not this person, that beauty has never been tested, and naivete is untested. So anybody can be naive and be good when they're naive.
Yeah.
But it's once we have lost our innocence and we continue to be good, that is the test, and he talks about true beauty, and he's also talking about physical beauty, and when he's discussing this so he's talking about beauty and not just like inner beauty, you know what I mean, and talking about how beauty is the ultimate source of empathy, and that's why we must appreciate it. And it is not simple, and it is not innocent, and it is not naive.
Yeah.
And and I thought that was demonstrated really well, and in Fata Morgana, because there was no, any innocent beauty was just destroyed after the first door, right? And again, that takes me back to like what I thought the author's intention was with that first door, of creating, here we are wandering through the field, and there are butterflies and the birds singing, and it's a sunny day, there's not a cloud in the sky, and none of us have pimples because we're kids and we look great, you know what I mean? And then the whole world comes crashing down,
Yeah.
and these people sort of have to rebuild themselves into paradise and to earn their way back to paradise again. Except that once they earn their way back to paradise in that glorious ending, it's no longer that naive, innocent beauty. It is the true beauty that John O'Donohue was talking about.
Yeah, because the story, I mean, the ending is like they lived happily ever after kind of ending, but in that particular case, it's very well pulled off. They lived happily ever after kind of ending, right? It's not.
Well, of course they would, because nothing stupid is going to take them down now. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
They've
yeah.
already been.
So it makes perfect sense. It's not one of those happily ever after endings that it's just silly. It's just, oh yeah, this was kind of boring. No, it's not only that it makes perfect sense, but you want that ending. If that ending wasn't there, this story would have been just, I don't know, pure torture.
No, you're absolutely right. It would have felt like it was for nothing. You know,
Yeah.
it would have felt like an intellectual trick. Like,
Yeah.
oh, well, because this is really how it would have ended up. And I hate that. It's like, come on, you're telling me a story. I mean, the whole point of a fairy tale, for instance, isn't, and they lived happily ever after. It's they lived happily ever after despite all the shit that happened to them, right? Or because of all the stuff that happened to them, because, the prince had to fight through beasts and thorns in order to, kiss Sleeping Beauty or whatever, and through, this horrible witch. And it's because, Snow White had to overcome death, after eating the poison apple, and that the prince had to be the catalyst for that. You know what I mean? That they actually could live happily ever after, because otherwise, well, how boring for one thing, but otherwise, why would they live happily ever after? They're totally untested. Why would we care if they lived happily ever after? Just because they're, he's a prince and she's pretty,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, and I mean the kinds of things that Michelle and Giselle had to go through in the story to get to that ending. I mean, you can't demand more from anyone when it
No,
comes to proving their love. I mean, it's
no,
more and more than proven.
it is. And it's also, it also tells you how, or shows you how that sort of happily ever after is because of gratitude, because you're
Yeah,
so grateful to finally be there.
yeah,
And without gratitude, you don't appreciate what you've got in your life. You don't appreciate the person in your life, your circumstances, whatever it is, even when you're going through difficult times. And gratitude is wisdom.
yeah,
We're not born grateful for the most
yeah.
part. We earn
You,
we earn that.
Yeah. You know one particular scene that I love from the story because it establishes a perfect contrast between Michelle and Morgana, because I mean you can establish parallels between their stories because Michelle is basically the one who is able to forgive everyone who wronged him, but Morgana is the one who's not, or at least needs a bit
Yeah.
of a push, a little bit of help there. But the scene where Michelle asks Giselle if she wants Antonin, his father, to be cursed because of
Yeah.
the sexual
Everything. Yeah.
assault, and
Yeah.
she says no. But I mean, if she had said yes, he would have asked Morgana to curse him, and
Yeah.
he would have gone with it. But
Yeah.
but the only reason why he would have gone with it was because of love. It was not because he wanted vengeance for himself. He wanted vengeance for her, for Giselle, right?
Yes. And it was incredibly powerful that she said no too.
Yeah.
That it was that was a very honorable resolution, I thought,
Oh yeah.
on both ends, right?
Hmm.
Because
Hmm.
he needed to say that he would get vengeance on her behalf. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? He needed to say, I'm willing to do this. I'm willing to protect you this way. I'm willing to guard your dignity
Yeah.
and try to help heal your soul this way. Even if this is, even if it
Yeah.
will sully my own soul. I'm willing to do this for you. And and she said no.
Yeah. But look, when it comes to perhaps the most frustrating part of the entire story, I mean, for me, it has to be the story between Jacopo and the white-haired girl. It's so incredibly frustrating
Yeah.
how they felt the same for each other, and how, I mean, if she just went out of the cottage house or something, or if he
Yeah.
went there and talked with her, or vice versa,
It would have
everything,
they would have solved
everything.
everything.
Yeah, they would have solved everything. I mean, it was just like, oh my God, come on. Either
I
of you
know.
just go and talk with the other person, stop writing letters and stuff, and stop depending on Maria to get you the letter.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, really, has it never occurred to you that maybe this is that you're being messed with? Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
Are you so involved in your story and the way you think it should turn out that you're not really thinking what's going on around you? You're not thinking three-dimensionally. That was part of what was so frustrating about it. And that was, and maybe that was also part of what did not make them so innocent in that.
Yeah.
That they enjoyed their punishment a little too much in order to kind of set themselves free and be happy when all they had to do was go to the other person, but there was something that they were getting out of. He was getting something out of punishing her and believing the worst, and she was getting something out of being punished
Yeah.
for quote no reason, right? But uh that was really good.
Yeah, but and at the same time, it made lots of sense because of Jacopo's backstory, because he was part of the mafia, and
Yes.
he was brought up in that sort of machismo
Mm,
kind of
mhm.
environment, and where it would have been. I don't know, extremely shameful for him to be betrayed by his wife or something like
Mhm.
that. So, I
And that
mean,
shame was so yeah, yeah,
I mean, so you basically, it's very frustrating, but at the same time, you understand where he comes from, right?
for sure. It's kind of like Othello, right? You're watching Othello, destroy his relationship with his wife, and because he can't, he just can't not believe what Iago is saying,
Yeah,
and he ends up killing her as a result, and all he had to do was go and ask her or believe her or look around Iago. I felt like that it was very Shakespearean, that storyline.
or even read the damn letters, because the things she
Read the
wrote
damn. I
there,
know. Yeah.
the things
I
she
mean,
wrote there,
really.
it was things that happened between them. I mean, it wouldn't make sense for her to have experienced the exact same things, the exact same episodes with
Yeah.
another person. So
No. No. It was funny because it was so frustrating. It's like watching a horror movie and you're watching someone who's about to get killed go into the dark room and you're like, why are you going in the dark room? Why are you going in the dark room? you know
yeah, yeah, but it's realistic, We get frustrated with it, but it's very, very realistic. I bet that.
Well, that's it, because we get frustrated with it because we see ourselves in all of this. And that's what was, also so great about it, because it connects you to your own foibles, and also to your own triumphs.
Yeah. By the way, earlier I mentioned the Divine Comedy, but I mean, the entire story has lots and lots of religious elements to it. I mean, the entire Morgana story, and then Michelle being the name of the Archangel Michael, and the way he basically in the last door. I don't know what word to use here, but because it was not really redeeming her, but he went to Morgana and basically gave her a last moment of, oh my God, what should I call it? When he holds her in his arms and she's about to die. I mean, what would you call that? What does he do there?
Solace isn't the right word, and it neither is like forgiveness. It's sort of like absolution isn't even the right word. But it is. But there is you're right. I think it's very religious. Maybe it is absolution in a way that it's a level of understanding from a spiritual perspective that allows a person to go into the dark night, right? That allows them to go and not fear, and to know that they will be understood.
Right. And it's basically reliving, even though it's very brief, reliving her pain and help her rest in peace in a way.
Yeah.
Because it's like you went through all of that, but now I'm an angel, I've been sent by God, and I'm here to lead you to heaven, to paradise, or something
I'm
like
your
that.
guide.
Exactly. Yeah, you've suffered enough, so
yeah.
Right. Yeah. So I have to ask you then, is this the best story ever written or not?
It is really freaking good, because not only is it like genuinely like good from a like any perspective, a literary perspective, but it's so damned entertaining.
Yeah.
And what it manages to do, what most, like, even really good literary novels don't pull off,
Yeah.
because it's wildly entertaining. It shows that you can be wildly entertaining and engage your audience, your reader, in fully, as you are as engaged as you would be watching Maverick or whatever, or some other kind of incredible story, on a that's larger than life, and that most critics would they're look down on. It is as every bit as exciting and engaging as that, and yet it's so good, and it's so deep, and spiritual, and myth. It's so big.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just wanted to turn off my phone because I can't stand when
No problem.
it pings when I'm talking. And I forgot to turn it off. But that's it. And that alone could possibly make it like at least the greatest story that's been written in a really, really long time, because it manages to be both so entertaining, so adventurous. I mean, what an adventure, and yet it's really, really good. It's so well written. It's
I think
well thought through. It's so complex, and yet it's simple. You know what I mean? I mean, it's just talking about very simple emotions that we all have. It's not. You don't have to twist yourself into pretzels to understand what's happening and what they're going through, in their hearts and in their souls, and how, and their thought process. It's just God, I thought it was so good. I just thought it was so good. I can't praise it enough.
Yeah.
I've been telling people about it a lot. I've been telling people
And
watch
how
visual
do how do people react when you tell them that it's a visual novel? Because it's not that common yet for people to read those
They're
kinds of things, right?
they're very intrigued, and it has really kind of lit a fire in me to want to get into the visual novel space for my own work,
Yeah.
because it's I thought after I started watching it through the YouTube um
Yeah.
channel that you recommended, and I was like, God, I wish I could just get rid of this narrator guy, who's taking us through. And so I went to Amazon, and you can get The House of Fata Morgana in book form. You can get it on Kindle, and I'm sure that it probably has some imagery with it. I'm that's unclear, but it wasn't the same. I feel
Yeah.
like the reason why it can be, the narrative is so complex.
Yeah.
It's not like serpentine, it's kaleidoscopic. I mean, it is crazy. And one of the reasons why you can follow it pretty easily is because it's also visual. And
Yeah.
that gives you so much more to work with as an author. You can really go that much farther, and you can make a story a lot more difficult without frustrating the audience. And so that was really, really exciting for me. I loved the visual aspect of it. Now I'm trying to, that's one of the things that I've been promoting when I talk to people about this story. I'm like, no, it's got to be, it's got to be seen as well as read. And I love that they have you read it too. It's not, the words are there. You see, it's meant to be read. It's not a movie. You know what I mean? It is meant to be read, but it's also meant to be seen.
Yeah.
And it's, more complicated than a comic book, though, which is,
Yeah.
which has just a different vibe to it entirely,
No, it's really a unique medium, really. Right.
It's really, really unique.
And what about the soundtrack? I also love the soundtrack.
I love that. Yeah. And I feel like it was interrupted a lot because, again, I had a narrator, so I couldn't really absorb it. And it really made me want to get a gaming computer just in order to be able to watch visual novels, because it was such an incredible combination, and a fresh combination. Obviously, movies put together music and visual and dialogue, but the added dimension is the prose. That you can also appreciate the written word while you're watching this, and really appreciate it. You don't start thinking about other things when you're reading. You know what I mean? You're fully engaged. And damn, I really wish that movie theaters would present visual novels as well as films. I wish there was a place where you could watch this on a large screen.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously it's very long, so that it presents some problems, but maybe, you could buy, tickets for, all 8 doors or whatever it is. And then you go when you can, and you go watch your door, and there are ways to do it. And I just think that would be so incredible. And what a way to bring in new people too, and to just do something different and explore the visual storytelling that way.
Yeah.
Beyond just
I think they should make it into a series. I mean, I think it would be massively popular. I think it would be so successful. I mean, a story like this, it can't go wrong. It just can't go wrong.
I agree. Well, it can go wrong actually in the wrong hands. It can
Uh,
definitely go wrong because
yeah,
you're
we
going to have
already have
someone,
that. We
you're
already
going to
have
have
that
someone doing a
experience.
lot of stupid shit, and you
Yeah.
are. You're going to have some, some member of the creative committee, right? Going, I don't know. I think Michelle needs a dick. You know what I mean? You're going to have someone in there saying that, right?
Yeah.
Or I don't think Morgana needs to be quite that ugly after she's destroyed, and maybe we ought to keep her hot. It's just you just know you're going to have somebody saying something stupid.
Yeah.
So it can go wrong, but hopefully in the right hands of someone who is a real fan, and appreciates the story, and they would find a way and do justice to it.
Yeah.
With
Yeah,
the
and
right.
this is the kind of story that they could even, it wouldn't need to be like cartoons or anime.
No.
It could be with actors. So
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it could be a movie,
yeah,
I if maybe there could be a way too to have some sort of, narrator that's able to bring some of the language in too,
yeah,
that beyond just dialogue, you know what I mean? So that, one could get absorbed in that story and in that way too. Because I think that really was one of the great parts of it. I really did enjoy how it was written. I enjoyed the actual prose, and not just the story itself and the music and the visuals, but it all came together. You know what I mean? Which is so rare. Every part of it came together to make it just beautiful and perfect.
so and as a writer, was there something you learned from it that you think you're going to apply in your own your own work now?
Yeah, I mean, I want to go into the visual novel realm. I don't know how exactly I'm going to get there, but I'm going to get there. I mean, I'm already kind of partway there. I don't think I've told you this because we haven't had a chance to discuss it, but I have a friend and business partner, and we've started a publishing house called Speakeasy Editions. And it's not just
Oh,
publishing, it's also art and merchandise. It's story world and series based stories. It's not just like individual novels that come out. It's worlds and that are, sometimes directly and sometimes indirectly connected to the sort of art and print and photography collection that we have on the on our store and publishing house, and then we're also going to have merchandise that sort of brings you into those aesthetics. And so we want to, we're kind of in that realm already, although obviously that's not a visual novel, but I really want to go into the visual novel space at some point, sooner than later. I just think it's phenomenal. And
yeah,
like I said, I'd like to tell complicated stories, not complicated, like convoluted, but I like to tell stories that have some layers to them. And that is just so much more, you can work with dual timelines so much easier when you're dealing with a visual novel, and without losing people who are like, wait a minute, what time are we in? You know what I mean? I understand that, because a lot of really smart readers have a hard time with, say, like dual timelines.
yeah,
It's just hard for them to follow. And um, when you're approaching that story visually, it just becomes a lot easier. You can really take them on that journey and get them um, get them over those sort of miscommunications that
yeah,
things they might have missed that signaled, no, we're now in 1843 or whatever it is. We're no longer, in the present day. And good, I mean, God, with Fata Morgana, talk about jumping timelines, and you go
yeah,
from, you go back to the Middle Ages, and then, you fast forward. And so that takes you all over the place. And yeah, there are times when you're a little bit confused, but it's never unsatisfying because you're being brought in visually and you're hearing music and all of this, so you're sticking with it, and then suddenly you have the revelation of where you are and what has just the story that has just been presented to you, you know?
Yeah.
How about you? Do you have a hard time now going back to regular novels after getting so absorbed in visual novels, or is it no, I can go back and forth easily?
No, I can go back and forth because I haven't gotten really seriously into visual novels. I mean, The House in Fata Morgana, to be honest, it's the
Yeah.
only visual novel I've read up till now, so it's not been that hard for me. And I also anyway read comics. I mean, I read manga, Japanese manga and stuff like that. So it has some elements of it. No, no, of
It
course not.
does.
But
It kind of
of course,
reminded me of the Mr. Octopus, the octopus teacher story. I mean, it didn't remind me of that, wasn't, but I mean, in terms of its complexity, you know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah,
And the drama, and the sort of mythological proportion of it. You know what I mean? It
yeah,
was just, they're both such big stories. And I was thinking that that octopus teacher story would make a great visual novel.
yeah. Probably.
It would be brilliant.
I mean, I don't know what's with Japanese people, but Japanese people, in terms of creating stories, it's almost like the Russians.
I
I
was
don't know.
just going to say, I feel like that they have taken over the mantle. The mantle has been passed to Japanese storytellers from the great Russian novelists to now, the great Japanese storytellers. I think you're right. I think currently the Japanese are the best storytellers in the world,
Yeah, I
hands
agree.
down. I mean, it's not even close.
I agree. Yeah,
It's really what the Russians were until 5 minutes ago.
yeah.
You know.
Hmm. So, I mean, do you have any final thoughts on the house in Fata Morgana? Something that we might not have touched on, or
I don't think so. I think we were pretty thorough. Do you have anything else that you want to add that? I
no?
mean, the only thing that I would say is, I mean, that it's such a satisfying experience for the reader slash viewer, but I, I can't even, it would be such a satisfying experience as a storyteller to, to find the right music, to find the right artist, to illustrate the story, to edit it in such a way that it's long enough but not too long, that's correct for
Yeah.
the medium. It's just it's really kind of inspiring.
Hi guys, thank you for watching this interview until the end. If you liked it, please share it, leave a like and hit the subscription button. This show is brought to you by Enlights, learning and development done differently. Check their website at enlights.com, and also please consider supporting the show on Patreon or PayPal. I would also like to give a huge thank you to my main patrons and PayPal supporters: Per Ergo Larsen, Jerry Mullerens, Frederick Sunda, Bernardo Seixas, Olaf Alex, Adam Kessel, Matthew Whittingbird, Arno Wolf, Tim Hollis, Eric Alenia, John Connors, Philip Forrest Connolly, Dan Demetrio, Robert Windiger, Rui Inácio, Zup, Mark Neves, Colin Holbrook, Phil Kavanagh, Mikkel Stormir, Samuel André, Francis Fortiago Nunes, Fergal Cossen, Hal Herzog, Nuno Machado, Jonathan Labyrinth, João Linhares, Stantantia, Samuel Correia, Eric Hines, Mark Smith, João Eira, Tom Hummel, Sardus France, David Sloan Wilson, Yacila Dez Araújo, Romain Roach, Diego Londonho Correia, Yannick Punter, Dana Rusmani, Charlotte Bliss, Nicole Barbaro, Adam Hunt, Pavlo Stasevski, Nelek Bach, Guy Madison, Gary G. Alman, Sam Afzal, Adrian Yeager, Paul Tolentino, João Barbosa, Julian Price, Edward Hall, Edin Bronner, Douglas Fry, Franca Bortolotti, Gabriel Ponce Cortez, Ursula Litsky, Scott, Zachary Fish, Tim Duffy, Sonny Smith, John Wiseman, Daniel Friedman, William Buckner, Paul George Arnaud, Luke Lowacki, Georgios Theophanos, Chris Williamson, Peter Wolozin, David Williams, Diogo Costa, Anton Erickson, Charles Murray, Alex Shaw, Maury Martinez, Coralie Chevalier, Bangalore Atheists, Larry D. Lee Jr., Old Erringbone, Sterry, Michael Bailey, Dan Sperber, Robert Grassi, Igor N., Jeff McMahon, Jake Zool, Barnabas Radix, Mark Campbell, Thomas Dovner, Luke Nissen, Chris Story, Kimberly Johnson, Benjamin Galbert, Jessica Nowicki, Linda Brandon, Nicholas Carlson, Ismail Benzliman, George Coriatis, Valentin Steinman, Per Crowley, Kate Van Goller, Alexander Hubbard, Liam Dunaway, BR, Masood Ali Mohammadi, Perpendicular, Jonas Hertner, Ursula Goodenough, Gregory Hastings, David Pinsoff, Sean Nelson, Mike Lavigne, and Jos Necht. A special thanks to my producers, Isar Webb, Jim Frank, Lucas Stafiniak, Tom Vanagdam, Bernard Ugni, Curtis Dixon, Benedict Mueller, Thomas Trumbull, Catherine and Patrick Tobin, Giancarlo Montenegro, Alni Ortiz, and Nick Golden, and to my executive producers, Matthew Lavender, Sergio Quadrian, Bogdan Kanivets, and Rosie. Thank you for all.